Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, an aviation podcast about all things learning to fly and flying in midlife. My name's Ben. I am a commercially certificated pilot. I have an instrument rating. Fly an airplane we like to call the Beast. It's a Cessna 182, based here in the Atlanta metro area. Joining me tonight, we have our friend, Mr. Brian Siskin, who is under the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180, beautiful little bird named the Lucy. Not the Lucy. That was pretty bad. It is the one and only Lucy.
The Lucy, yes. And I had to make the distinction with someone the other day that was meeting Lucy, that it was around Lucille Ball and not Charlie Brown Lucy.
That's an important distinction, though.
Yes. But fun fact about Lucille Ball, since we're already just going to be non sequitur, she had the vision to record all of the I Love Lucy episodes in color for forecasting the imminent invention of something called syndication and knowing that it would be ready for modern television. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, glad to be here. And I got a little time in Lucy today, as a matter of fact. And it's been a pretty high pressure, amazing weather umbrella all around here. So hopefully you guys have been flying too.
Yeah. And we'll maybe touch on that more in a minute. I also want to introduce our other quality West Coaster, our sport pilot extraordinaire, flying a CTLS we like to call the Egg. It's our friend Ted. Ted, good evening.
Hey there.
Or good afternoon to you, sir.
Yes, it's afternoon. It's still light outside. This is, just a nice afternoon. Our weather's a little different. We're calling for what they call an atmospheric river, which is when we get all the moisture coming from Hawaii and it just like blasts us for days. And so expecting it to get really wet here.
That sounds like the name of a jazz fusion violin record.
Atmospheric river. Yes. I like it. Yeah.
Too funny. We have another guest joining us tonight, a friend of the show who does a lot of work for us on the background in our Discord server. And he has been on several times. Our friend Geek, Wendell Geek, also known as Wendell Geek. He flies a Cherokee 235. Do we have a name for her?
Not really. Not really. I tried Wanda for a little bit, but it didn't stick.
Gosh, we miss Maggie.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talking about flying, I picked up the Beast on Saturday, and I got a ride over with some local friends of the show and to pick it up. And then I met another listener, Dan Y, who happens to have a daughter that's friends with my son, and we met through this podcast, oddly enough. But we met up in your neck of the woods, kind of, Brian. It's we went up to Swanee.
Oh yeah.
And fortunately, the winds were very calm there that day and had one of the better landings I've had in a long time, if I do say so myself, which I know that's probably a pretty low bar for you guys. But
no, that's a tricky place to land.
Is that
the winds were very calm. Yeah.
Is that the kind of short one on the mountain? Yeah.
Yeah, Uniform Oscar Sierra. And there's nobody at the FBO, but they have this huge bike rack sitting out front. And you just go grab a bike, and they've got a paved trail that goes into town. We went and grabbed some breakfast. He had a one wheel, and I rode the bike and had a nice chat, and then hopped back in our planes and went back.
When was this?
Saturday.
Yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
6 days ago when this is released. Yes.
Yeah.
No, it was kind of a last minute thing. I found out, I had the ride over there, and then Dan reached out to me like at 11:30 at night saying, "Hey, I'm going to be up in this area. You want to meet somewhere?"
Very cool. That's awesome. And also,
Yeah.
did you notice how a lot of the bikes are just a mishmash of, well, I guess Ben is gone now. It's just interesting when you're at that airport and you go to the bike rack, because it's not like they're all the same kind of bike or something. It's like, it's just a mishmash of bikes.
So there's some new bikes up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm saying they get them every semester from all the students leaving them.
Oh, is that where they come from?
Yeah.
So we had some nice ones for this round, at least.
Yeah.
Oh, so it isn't the typical like $40 10-year-old Walmart bikes. They're actually like a little bit nicer.
Oh, no, there's some of those there too.
Okay,
But
that's what I'm used to seeing at the airports. It's like 15-year-old mountain bikes with chunky tires, and you're just going to ride half a mile.
a lot of these are those
Yeah,
beach bikes, just the single
Cruiser,
gear.
yeah.
Cruiser. Yeah, exactly. So, but no, it was a lot of fun. And I was thinking, you talked about that big high pressure system. I believe when I was going up there, the altimeter was like 3056. I mean, it's way up there.
Wow.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I was saying in Discord, we went and changed the oil on our airplane yesterday, and so we took it up in a lap in the pattern just to warm up the oil so it would drain in faster than 2 hours. And then when we got, when we were getting the weather to go up, and I'm like, I don't think the 5 in the Colesman has ever seen the light of day.
Oh, that's why you were saying 5. I couldn't figure out where that digit was that you were talking about.
Yeah. 3051 was the Colesman number. I'm like, wow, that is a very high number.
Yeah.
Do you think it's okay to, when you're doing altimeter readbacks, to just read back the last 2 numbers?
I was thinking about that too when you were talking about the 5s. Oftentimes I will, not always, but it's like, 01 or 92, because those are fairly common. But if you're in the middle, like a 5, I don't know.
for me, when it's 29 something, especially if it's 299 something, I like to say the whole thing just for the tongue twisting challenge of using my tail number 911, 909 or 2, whatever.
You turn into the ASOS, you're Niner,
Yep.
Niner, Niner,
Yeah.
Niner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Set in your speak and spell voice.
Well, how about you, Geek? Have you been flying at all?
Oh my gosh. I have been flying a metric ton. If you include the last 2 days of September, between that and October 14th, I put in 40.4 hours. So yeah, a lot. I flew up to New York to go to a conference. And then some plans changed and I flew back home to make sure that happened. Then me and some other pilots helped with the Operation Airdrop stuff around here. And then I flew to New York to pick up a friend to fly to, then we flew to Green Bay to watch the Packers play last week. And then I flew home. So it has been an insane amount of traffic for our flying for me.
You went to New York and Green Bay?
Yes, I flew Charlotte to New York to Milwaukee, technically, and then Milwaukee back to Charlotte. That was a very, very long cross country.
Yeah. But isn't this really the crux of why you get your pilot's license? I mean, if you think about it, this is the dream week for me. Going to New York and Milwaukee without having to go through TSA. That's not the only reason I got my license. Don't get me wrong. But man, that's really nice.
Yeah, it was. It was really nice. Although I did run into some challenging weather coming into Milwaukee, and I posted something in the Discord about that. And I thought I made some okay, but in retrospect, questionable decisions. And
You gotta love it. So for those who don't know, Wendell Geek, Mark here, is the curator and mastermind behind a lot of the technical details of our amazing Discord community. And without Mark, it would probably just be overtaken by spammers and bots. And I don't know, like it would be probably being used for, some sort of a foreign intel relaying or something. I don't know. It would be a mess.
And 3 busy channels and 27 that never get commented in.
That's true. Well, I think it's a little better than that, guys. But if you want to, if you want to just denigrate our own community, that's fine.
But Mark wasn't here, is what I'm saying. He's
I see. Oh, I didn't know. Okay, got it. Yes, I thought you were just saying it's not really that much fun.
No. It's because of Mark that it stays so well together. Yeah.
So Mark, I know that this is a special occasion for you when you said, "Hey guys, I want to create this sort of warrants a new category." It's like you've got a good story when you're like, I need a new category in the Discord that is just for this and things like this. So I'm glad that you did that.
Yeah.
Well, I did limit it to caps available to limit the exposure of the stupid.
Yes.
There's some degree of stupid that was done on this flight, and I wanted to limit the exposure to it. So that's why I decided to say something on the podcast that's going to go out to everyone.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. Yeah. That's thinking. Yeah.
That's right. That's thinking ahead.
I forget who told me. Who was it? They were basically saying that. It's like for those who don't think the FAA is watching, the FAA is actually watching. Those of you on YouTube doing things, or us that post videos and things. If you think about it, it's probably not a ton of stuff to monitor. So anyway,
the good news is this particular. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ted, but the good news was this particular thing was just dumb, not illegal, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, not that I've done any illegal things, that I've got other illegal things. I don't mean to be suggesting that.
That's the sweet spot we like to stay in.
I got a state airport director reach out to me because I had completely messed up in one of my videos, and I took it down. That was I don't mind talking about it, but it was the beach landing, where it's hard to know what the runway is when the beach is zillions of miles long, but the relationship that allows it to be a legal runway is narrow enough. Enough people are concerned about it that you don't want to be putting up a video where you're like, well, I'm at the midpoint of the runway when you're actually at the far end of the runway. And, it's like going out of the boundary significantly. So it was like, oh yeah, let me pull that. But there's an example of it, right? It was somebody at the state searching for that airport name, seeing a new video.
And you were like, let me show you how incredibly fast I can take this down. Your mind will be blown.
Yes. Yeah. It was down before I called him back because I ran out of my phone.
Right.
So
what video?
Yes. Yeah. Strangely enough, though, I met that guy within a week of him calling me. It just happened to be at a aviation safety expo. And so I was like, hey, I'm the beach guy. He's like, oh, you're Ted.
Was he carrying around like a sort of wanted picture of you or anything?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I knew you'd be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah. So it happens. But
very cool. Well, we do have one big event coming up. This is episode 99, which we're squeezing in so we can actually make our 100th episode, the actual 100th episode, which will be next Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will be broadcasting live from Fairmont Airport in Fairmont, West Virginia. And that's 4 Golf 7 is that ICAO code. This is the base camp for our founder of the Midlife channel, Midlife pilot himself, extraordinaire, Chris Moran. So we're really excited. We're all going to be in the same room, which I don't think we've ever done before.
No.
For recording, not for sleeping.
Oh,
for recording.
But yes.
Well, and for sleeping too, actually.
Yeah.
But
I'm starting to feel a cold coming on.
We'll be in the same house too, so it's not necessarily sleeping together, but sleeping under one roof. But so we're really excited about it. I know we've got some stuff planned, and I think there are a few people coming in. This is not a formal fly-in. We're just all getting together. If you want to join us, you can come. We'd love to have you, but you're going to be making your own reservations. We're not doing any hotels or anything like we've done in the past. So, but at least tune in 8 p.m. Eastern next Monday, October 28th.
And it'll be also video tricked out. It won't just be audio tricked out. It'll be multi-camera tricked out.
Yeah, the terms that were being used discussing how it's done were way over my head. I just know there's things happening with the video and audio that must be fantastic.
I also know that multi-camera for people that have faces for radio like us it's not gonna. You can have all the cameras you want. There's not going to be an angle that's becoming, but we'll do it anyway.
Exactly. You want to take us into our housekeeping, Brian?
Yeah, I'll knock that out real quick. So usually we have more people in the chat because this is we just kind of launched this one. We didn't even really tell people. So for those of you in the chat, by the way, talk amongst yourselves, the few that are here. Tell your friends. Housekeeping. So we'd like to thank our listeners for making this the best pilot community that we know of. It's a positive, encouraging, supportive place where we talk about everything from training, bad radio calls, sharing personal minimums to keep each other accountable, the challenges of plane ownership, offering feedback on flight plans, and arranging community meetups. Basically, it is a goldmine of experience and camaraderie. Camaraderie, by the way, when you see it spelled out, is a weird looking word. Not just about flying, but growing as midlife pilots. You can engage with the community by supporting us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That's 25 cents per episode, one gumball per episode. Gumball. Yeah. Gumball.
Putting it in the thing and twisting it.
Yeah.
That slot and
Yeah. And then like this hard thing comes out of the bottom of this dirty, dusty bin. It's hard as cement, and the next thing you do instinctively is eat the thing. That's
you're
great.
You're an 8-year-old, and the gum has been in there longer than you've been alive.
That's right. That is right. So anyway,
25 cents an episode. Yeah,
25 cents an episode. You can support the podcast and join the Midlife Pilot podcast community on Discord. You'll get access to miles of bonus content engineered largely by Mr. Geek here, which has been fantastic. We got another new debrief up and other things. There's a lot going on in our Patreon that is beyond the content of this podcast. Definitely worth it on that alone. We share our stories of challenging flight experiences and a whole lot more. 10% of the proceeds of our Patreon are donated to the Freedom Aviation Network, who works with volunteer pilots to provide safe, efficient, and rapid air transportation for survivors of human trafficking and their advocates. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're here now, and you'll get alerted when we do weird stuff like this. And send us feedback. We love hearing from listeners with insights, stories. Send a voice memo, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. We respond to every message eventually, and you might even hear yourself on a future episode. To join the community, give feedback, get merch. We've got some new dad hats there people are excited about that look like they've already been dragged down the road, or something. They've got that kind of look. So they're already broken in. I'm not sure if we're buying them new and Ben is just beating them up first before we send them out, or whether that's how they're made. But
they look like the rest of us, well broken in. Yeah,
that's right.
Yes.
Holier than thou. And for all of that, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. So that's that.
Awesome. I'd like to think of the hats as, like me, distressed.
Yes.
That's what we do.
Patina.
Yes.
Patina, good word.
We wanted to talk about tonight's topic is, since we're coming up on our 100th milestone, we thought it'd be kind of fun to go down memory lane and see where we were at different 100-hour milestones.
Yeah.
I made a kind of it's not a lengthy list, but thought maybe we just do a round robin. What were you doing on your 100th hour total time?
Yeah.
Where I thought we would start. And I'll kick it off. Went through the logbook, and I was working on, and I love what I wrote in my logbook. It really is such a great trip down memory lane. I did power on stalls and recovery. So I had to put recovery in there because, you're doing both, I guess. I mean, of course you're going to recover from a stall. Duh, just put in power on stalls. But yeah, and then we did patterns, entries, and landings for my 100th hour. And
how many hours when you got your ticket?
I was at 65.
Okay. So
I was just doing this.
Yeah.
I took a CFI up with me, and I wanted to keep fresh with that stuff. So yeah, I was doing that. And then I did a couple of laps in the pattern over at Paulding. So that was my 100th hour, power on stalls and recovery.
That's great.
And I'm very glad that I recovered, because if not, it would have been a completely different outcome.
Probably wouldn't have logged it if you didn't recover, but
That's right. I just think it's funny that I had to mention that I actually did recover from it, that my existence doesn't prove it in and of itself, but I had to include that into my logbook.
Did you know at the time that it was your 100th hour?
Nope.
Or, after that flight or anything?
Yeah.
Nope. It wasn't until I totaled that page.
Ah, right.
It didn't occur to me to be on the lookout for that 100th hour.
Yeah. Brian, how about yourself?
I did not know.
So my 100th hour, and by the way, we were doing this all pretty quickly, and I was telling Ted earlier, my brain doesn't do things very well generally, and to be looking at spreadsheets or logbooks and trying to figure out, okay, where was I at 100 hours? Or I just don't have a quick, easy way to do that. So I thought, but then I forgot, oh wait, I'll just download a CSV of my entire logbook and then put it into AI and just ask AI. And I basically just put it into AI and said, when was my 100th hour? What was going on? And I even went so far, and you'll get some of this. I also wanted to know contextually, what was the weather like? What was going on in the world that day? So more information than people really care about. But I just thought it was interesting to do this in that way.
Yeah.
So my 100th hour flight, and this is actually a really good one. It was April 24th, 2022. And so that was within 3 days of being also 1 year of my first year from my first lesson. So 1 year and 100 hours came pretty much almost on top of each other there in a perfect synchronization. I was flying November 51871, a Cessna 172 Papa model, 1981, I believe. That was one that I had started renting from this, quasi flight club situation. But it was, I already feel like I'm talking about aviation in the 30s when this is only a few years ago, but I was paying $80 an hour wet.
Wow.
To rent a nice 172.
A 172, not even a 150 for that price. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that the plane you took to Ocracoke?
Yeah. And so in fact, April 24th, if you look back, my 100 hours happened. I was going from, oh wait, no, it wasn't on that. Okay. So, but yeah, I was going from downtown. I went from Knoxville downtown to Hickory. So I believe that all I was doing was maybe going to Winston-Salem. I'm not quite sure. I gotta look, but yeah. So I did a 3.4 hour, 265 nautical mile flight. And it was, thanks to AI, I can just see what the weather was without having to go look it up or whatever. But it was spring conditions. I did AI observed that it would have been a mountain crossing, which would have required careful planning for winds and weather in the Appalachians. And it was like, I did a pretty complex route for terrain navigation. I was really focused on not just doing direct inter over the mountains. And as you guys know, that's just not really how you should roll. You should try to follow roads and waypoints that make sense and airports and whatever. And, I was cognizant at that time also of, flying over mountains with proper distance over them and flying across the ridges at a 45 and, all those things. So it's kind of neat to look back on. Like I was really kind of pushing myself, I think, at 100 hours to be doing a 3.4 hour flight in the mountains. That's pretty wild. So I look, I'm kind of proud of myself, like sort of patting myself on the back, like that's way to get after it, kid. But
that's the fun part about this whole exercise is that you really get to reflect.
Yeah. And here's another thing that AI did for me that was really neat is it actually noted what my training progression was leading up to that. And it actually mirrors exactly what I was thinking, because I was so conscientious at that time of for me, flying a 3-hour leg or a 3.4 hour leg was, a moon landing, it was like, it was an intense thing to try and do. It was very ambitious. And so I was very cognizant of building my time up. And we've talked about this to a lot of people in a lot of different episodes about the importance of, conscientiously building your experience. And it noted that my training progression says started with local flights at JWN, expanded to nearby airports, culminated in long cross countries. So it's kind of general, but I mean, I really do remember thinking, okay, what's a good 1.5-hour flight that I can do? And then what's a good 2-hour flight that I can do? And what's a good 2.5-hour flight that I can do? And I really was thinking about, building up to that. Looking back on it now, it's like, geez, like, why did it was so easy, you know what I mean? But it's easy for us to forget. And I think that's what, the value of this exercise is how, for those that are training and feeling frustrated or feeling like this is beyond your capacity, or, you're feeling dejected by your current performance, or like these things are really beyond you. Yes. And we all felt that way. And then we all got to a point where we can look back on it and be like, oh, that's so cute. I was all worried about this or that, so it's great. You should be worried about that stuff.
What do you think I've been thinking about you for the last 3 years?
I know, right? like, yeah, what's wrong with this guy? And then it even provided me historical context, and it's talking about how high the fuel prices were and for GA at that time, the growing commercial pilot shortage, which we've already been back through the ebb and flow of that, and airline mask mandates had just been lifted. So to give you a sense of what was going on in the world that time, we were sort of, I don't know. I think training and learning in that time had an extra special purpose because we were all looking to just individuate beyond the circumstances that were going on and have control over your environment and where you can go and what you can do, whatever. So anyway, so it was all good. That's my 100th hour.
So Bearded Aviator down in the comments said that that 172 is the plane that you flew to Center to see him.
It is, yeah. And honestly, to go see Crazy Mike here, that was probably one of the first, that was probably in that range of hour and a half cross countries that I was taking on at the time to try to get used to doing that. I was just a newbie at that stage.
Yeah.
Go see Crazy Mike. Center is a great airport down in Alabama.
I've tried a couple of times. Crazy Mike, we need to get back, try to get back on the train and meet up. Mr. Geek, did you pull your timer? Where were you on your 100th hour?
I was still a student pilot on my 100th hour. I didn't get my ticket until 175 hours. And what I had logged was simulated instrument, constant rate climbs, turns to heading, unusual attitude recovery, S-turns across the road, and turns around a point were what were logged in that particular log entry. And I went and I went and looked up the recording of the flight, and I found it, and I started watching it and quickly couldn't watch it. I couldn't. I'm like, this is, it was, so part of getting 100 to 175 hours and taking that long to get my private was that I had a instructor that was a little perfectionist and wouldn't sign me off for things that were, I felt like he was being a little perfectionist. So eventually I got frustrated and switched. And so I'm watching this back and I'm listening to him. I'm just listening to some of the interactions that I had back and forth with him and cringing. I'm like, oh, I can't watch this. I just can't watch this.
So what's an example?
So he says, put the foggles down. I say, I put the foggles down, no problem. And then he says, okay, I want you to turn to heading 090. I want and I'm making this turn to 090, and then he points at the turn coordinator and says, make sure it's a 2-minute turn, a standard rate turn.
Yep.
And I'm looking at it, and it is a standard rate turn. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next thing he asks me is he says, oh, hey, do you see the traffic out to your left? I said, no, I have my foggles down. And he said, good answer. There were some quirks about him that were just a little bit annoying, and in retrospect are really annoying. So I couldn't watch the rest of that video.
Wow.
You didn't get to 175 hours to get your private ticket without a lot of quirks, we could say.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it possible that you could have just gotten your CFI while you were training to then train yourself?
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
You had the hours for it.
I mean, I did eventually. I got really frustrated and asked for a second opinion. And the guy who gave me the second opinion said, I have no idea why you're not signed off. And so then I
really hope
you're fine.
There are so many people that have a difficult time with their training because of either reasons of their own performance or their own life circumstances or CFIs or weather or all these things. And you're such a great example of how that can still turn out really, really well. And I always want people to just remain encouraged. I've got several friends that have stopped training for long windows now that want to pick it back up, and they feel like they've got too many hours, in training. And, so Mark, what would you say to people that feel like they're in that situation where they can't sort of break through?
Well, so the first thing is definitely go get a second opinion, right? When I was in that situation, I had absolutely no idea how to assess my frustration. Was my frustration, should it be directed at my performance or should it be directed externally, right? I had no idea how to assess that. And so I went and got a second opinion with somebody who knew my first CFI, and that was pretty uneventful. And then I decided, okay, I need to go get a second opinion with somebody who is not at all, doesn't even know my CFI's name. And that was a very fruitful, that was much better. So my sort of assessment of that is, hey, fly with someone else and get a second opinion and find out whether or not you should be get more input as to whether or not you should be directing the frustration at yourself or at the circumstances that are being presented to you.
But I guess my question really, that's all perfect. Thank you for that. My question was really more about your mindset. How did you reconcile how did you make, a lot of people would just feel at 175 hours, like, what's the point? Or am I ever going to get this done? Or, I don't know. Was there anything about your mindset that, like, were you just...
Well, you actually said something. I came on and had some conversation with you somewhere along the lines that I was really frustrated with how long it was taking me to get my private. And you said something along the lines of, like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your check ride and you're going to pass. And you're going to go from being a student pilot with 175 hours to a private pilot with 175 hours. And nobody's going to know the difference. And I'm like, that's really kind of a good point.
Yeah. And you're going to have better hours in a lot of ways, for, in some ways, right? For having that much more instruction, if it is quasi at times, or whatever. But no, that's awesome. I just always I always want people to just stick it out and see it through. And you're one of the most sort of talented and prolific fever pitch pilots that I know that knows all the things. So,
Well, I'll give you two of those three. I'm going to hold back on talented.
That's okay. You're right. No, you're right. So, I'm sorry. I'm not. No, but that's awesome. So anyway, so Ted.
Yeah. So it was cool to go back and look at this and kind of check my memory to reality. So I started training I had like 2 flights in December 2021. So I basically started at the very beginning of 2022. My 100-hour flight was in the summer of 2022. I got my ticket in June. And so in July, I hit my 100. And I was surprised when I went back and looked at it because I've always been saying that I had about 65 hours when I got my ticket. I had 83. So that's always a good thing to remember. It's like, oh yeah, those hours are all over the place. But I wasn't saying a lower number because I wanted it to sound better. I was giving a lower number because that's what I remembered it being. So I didn't fly much in July, but the 2 flights I had before that were with an instructor, and I was getting comfortable with flying in towered airspace. And that flight, the 100-hour flight, was my first solo flight that I spent some time in a Delta. And I noticed I went to the Delta in town that was intimidating for the tower controller. So,
and of the 35 different aircraft types that you've flown throughout your aviation career, which one was this?
It's the only one I have a tattoo of yet, and that was the RV-12. So, which is what I trained in, and so it wasn't long after that I started flying lots of different planes to see what I liked. Within maybe 2 months of that, I started flying lots of different things. But I had about 299 landings by that 100-hour mark. So that was a interesting number for me. It's also interesting to look in the logbook, and you can see pretty clearly where you did your check ride because you start seeing names of people in your notes that you've been flying with. It's like, I flew with Cindy, I flew with Mom, I flew, those types of things. And all those new experiences at like this, 17 hours in of having my ticket, right? Like, this is when all of a sudden these things start happening. And so it was really neat. So no new airports or anything else, but new experiences.
Very cool.
We had a couple in the comments here. Plain Places Adventures said their 100th hour, they were 17 years old and took a girl for a first ride on a 1.3 hour cross country to Three Rivers, Michigan. So they were living 1.3 hours away from Three Rivers, Michigan, wherever that is. That's cool.
A girl. It was
a girl. It was 17, Yeah.
Just wouldn't it have been just better if it was 1.2 hours from Three Rivers? I would have that would have been
3 hours from Three Rivers. Yeah. And Bearded Aviator said, my 100th hour was testing the new starter for the 182, then commercial maneuvers. Ben's loving that. Nice 182 reference here. And I'm doing commercial maneuvers at 100 hours. That's cool. Yeah.
Definitely. So now we have Ben, you're going to do landing?
I could do landings.
Yeah.
My 100th landing came during night landing proficiency. And it was down in, I just decided to go out into the night and just fly around and see the sights. And I went down to Columbus. I don't know why I chose that airport. There was a specific reason. I may have been going to Thomaston to visit with my dad and just wanted to hit a Class D, and that was the closest one. But I did 3 full stop taxi backs in Columbus. So I think the second one I did was my 100th landing.
That's a good one.
You're doing solo cross countries, or
I wanted to go get night currency.
But 100 landings, you had you were already a private pilot?
Oh no, well, you know what? You're right. I wasn't a private pilot then. I was with my instructor. That's why we needed to do a long cross country.
Gotcha.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, think of the 100 afterwards, but no, it came like well before. It came like within 40 or 50 hours, I think.
Well, I mean, this is tough for you because it's like, what was going on in the world? Like, new series, Starsky and Hutch has been launched, like this.
Well, in my defense, that was 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Or actually 9 years ago. I started training at 17, but this happened in 2018. So
that's a long time ago.
Speaking of a long time ago, Nathan Ballard said his 100th hour was in 1991, back when Brian's car was brand new.
Almost.
Yeah. My car was only 6 years old. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was night cross country is what I was doing. That's why it was to Columbus. So thanks for pointing that out, Ted. But yeah.
Nathan Ballard's 100th landing was before Nirvana broke.
100th hour. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. 100th hour. Yeah.
100th Technically, that means the 100th landing would have been also, but
yeah.
How about you, Brian?
Well, according to artificial intelligence, my 100th landing occurred on October 23rd, 2021 in November 5880 Echo, which is a 172 that I trained in as a flight school plane with the 180 horsepower STC. And it's really a cool plane. I really liked that plane a lot. It's still around. I don't think it's part of the flight school anymore. I think the owner sold it, but it's still owned by somebody at the same airport. But now, instead of living in a hangar, I saw it out in a shade port the other day, and I thought, oh boy, it's like one step closer. But yeah, love 80 Echo. Great plane. And so it says it was during your flight to 1 Alpha 7 Franklin County Airport from John Toon. It says AI says this was a significant cross-country flight where you had one landing at a 1 Alpha 7 at 5:10, followed by one landing back at John Toon at 5:25, with the return landing being your 100th landing as a pilot. The flight details. I guess I flew around for 2.8 hours that day, and it noted that I had a passenger, and that passenger also lives in my home. So, so that was pretty cool. 61.7 nautical miles each way. At the time, current events, Alec Baldwin was involved in a little bit of a situation,
Kerfuffle?
While shooting on a film, no pun intended. Yeah. This new thing called Meta was announced. And what else? Bitcoin was at $67,000. All time high.
Bad. Yeah.
All time high.
That was your 100th landing?
Yeah, 100th landing.
And you already, so you had your ticket already?
Yes. I'd had my ticket about a month.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, growing pilot shortage, travel rebounding, fuel prices going up. It was a clear autumn day, and it says AI says it was a significant cross-country flight for you or the passenger, reflecting the growing return to recreational aviation as restrictions and things were lifted. So pretty cool.
Is Franklin County, is that in the mountains?
I don't even remember.
I thought 1 Alpha.
I got to look it up.
Like right there at the Tennessee-Georgia border.
I got to look it up.
Yeah.
1 Alpha 7. Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
You know what? It may not be that, but that's fine. I was just curious. I was thinking that'd be a pretty bold trip for you to take Katie on to do some mountain flying.
Well, it seems like I don't know, as much as I wasn't totally sure what I was doing, I was also quite confident, which I think is, I was reasonably apprehensive about a lot of things, but yeah, I had a lot of, it's widely known. A lot of us have trouble learning how to land. I did not learn how to land very well. And by the time I was out on my own, especially, Jackson County. Was it said Franklin County? Oh, I see. So 1 Alpha 7 is, that is actually kind of crazy, Ben, that I took Katie, I took her to Jackson County. That's the airport that's on the riverside with a blind approach, with a short, narrow runway and terrain all around. That's pretty, it's not the craziest thing, but it ain't the sanest thing.
It's not a simple place to land, at least. Yeah.
It is definitely not, it's a place you better be on your game. So yeah, that's cool. I remember doing that now. Okay, I remember that because we met the airport manager that day. Okay, I remember all that now. Okay, great. I'm glad we went through this exercise. Now I actually remember it. Not just AI, but it actually happened. So yeah, I was really concerned about, as soon as I got my ticket, I just was like, I'm going to do landing practice and do challenging places and landings. And I was so scared that I was going to lose it all and have to just go right back to the beginning with my instructor if I didn't just, start just going.
Yeah. Right. Remedial landing training. Yeah.
Right.
I think I hit 100 hours really, or 100 landings really early because it was a challenge for me to slow the 182 down. And I went through a pretty, like a month-long rough patch of not being able to, I was just struggling with it. And it took a while for me to get back to it. So that's why I think I hit 100 landings. And no, Mark, I know what you're thinking. If I bounced it, I didn't count all three.
I actually wasn't thinking that this time.
100 landings, that's 10 passes down the runway? Yeah.
But no, it was, I was just trying to figure out why it was so, I mean, it was like 50 hours when I hit it, so I still had ways to go. So,
well, Plain Places says 100th landing was my first solo cross country at about 44 hours, 16 years old in 1991. Also, I'm impressed. That means you're digging up a 35-year-old logbook to calculate that. That's impressive.
Yes.
Mark, where were you at your 100th landing?
I was still pre-solo. This was April 28th, 2021, and 3 days later, I would have done my first solo. And I was still flying in a Cessna 172. I had glanced longingly at the low-wing Pipers, but I had never flown one.
You didn't want an extra door. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was pre-solo, 24 total hours and 100 landings. And if I go look in my logbook, like you can tell I was trying to get solo because, that flight had 8 landings, 10, 7, 15, 9, 14, etc. The previous flight.
Yeah.
So,
How many hours did you have when you got your Cherokee?
I can look that up, but I don't know.
Roughly. Like you were post solo.
Yeah, I was post solo. When I bought my Cherokee was probably 70 or 80 hours. And then when the first time I flew a Cherokee was not long after that first solo, because the person who had the plane after me had a prop strike. And then, I was either going to wait 6 months for that airplane to get its engine back or switch to the Cherokee. So,
yeah. Well, I went back and looked at mine. I didn't think it was very interesting until I thought about it a little more. So I had 34 hours and now I soloed at 120 landings and 36 hours. So I'm just before my solo at this point. 34 hours to 36 hours and I gained 20 more landings. So yeah, that's that time period that you're just hammering it out. But what it says in there is 020 pattern work at 7 Sierra 3, normal and short field takeoff and landings, work on pitching for airspeed, neutral aileron on takeoff. And so that reminds me of a lot of things that were going on then. Landing on 020 at 7 Sierra 3, Twin Oaks, means you're coming over the top of a hill, over the top of 120-foot dug fir trees on top of the hill, coming downhill, landing on a downhill on a short runway. It's not the preferred way to land there. It means that the winds are favoring that, which is really unusual. And I still, if I'm over that way and the winds are favoring that, I'll go over and practice on it because it's a tough landing. So to be doing that right before my solo is interesting.
Wow.
But it says a couple other things in there that, pitching for airspeed. So I'm obviously having trouble with that. And neutral aileron on takeoff. I was in this habit of taking the stick. Now it's a stick, not a yoke. But taking the stick and just dragging it over to the left as we're taking off. You take off and just kind of like everything would skew. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And then you sit there and you look at it and you like, let go of the stick and boing, there it goes to the center. It's like, oh, I guess I am doing that. So
right.
I usually use that 100 landings as the metric for a good time to solo. And y'all have heard me say that. And that's kind of why, is that it seems to be a number that comes up quite a bit.
Very cool. Well, again, kind of the point with this is to not only to commemorate next week's 100th episode, but just to kind of go back down memory lane and for all of us, which again, I think there's a lot of value in that, just going back and seeing what you were doing back then. And, we've got some folks in the chat. Mountain Rut Matt said he hadn't even gotten to 100 hours yet, but I feel like for those of you that are just starting your aviation journey, this is going to be a good opportunity for you to maybe make a note of it or maybe to commemorate it. So,
Yeah.
we did get some feedback from last episode.
Well, it was actually feedback about the 100.
Okay.
From Lord Alpha. Would you like to read that? Otherwise, I will.
I'll read it.
Great.
So, commonly known as Lord Alpha Juliet, that's a self-given title, just for the record. He is our friend. We have flown a lot together. He is a wonderful supporter of the show. But here's
Struggles with self-confidence, though, doesn't he?
he does not struggle from a lack thereof. I can promise you that. AJ's feedback. Salutations, faithful guardians of the hilltop. I greet thee with much gratitude for the tireless efforts you have each made in pursuit of forming this glorious bastion of camaraderie and fellowship, such as you have on a medium ironically named for chaos and discontent. Let's take a quick pause. Any of our listeners out there that listens to OB, you know immediately who I'm talking about because he submits very similar feedback onto their show as well. So,
Equal opportunity terrorist.
exactly. He continues, I commend each of you, the sage, the artist, the engineer turned jester, for your accomplishment. I recently received a missive explicating, yes, it's a real word, go look it up, your urgent request for legends and lore relating to one's 100th hour of ethereal pursuits. I write to you now to pass along the tale of a young squire named Alpha Juliet. Our story opens just before dawn with gentle tendrils of fog curling inches above the dew-laden grass of the Guntown Delta.
Huh.
The young lad, gazing up at the softly lightening heavens, having barely surpassed his 17th passage, circumnavigating the bright star at the center of our universe by a half a dozen fortnights hence. Having prepared tirelessly to be tested by the rigorous standards set forth by the Federal Aviation Administration, young Alpha Juliet and his mentor, Sierra Kilo, struck out aboard their trusty metal-winged hawk of the sky for the airport nestled in the mountainous area west of the unified land of Kakalaki. They had arranged to meet one of the elusive creatures known as designated pilot examiners. It was most likely during the takeoff roll from Guntown Delta, amidst the howl of the screaming engine and whistling of the wind whipping over the outstretched wings as the wheels got lighter and lighter on the pavement, that using the construct we know as time and space, Alpha Juliet achieved 100 hours of his pursuit of the heavens. Rarely do such momentous occasions coincide with such fitting numerology. The hope bursting in this young boy's heart as he rode that metal beast into the fiery dawn sky and glory unending. Well, at least that's how I remember it. Cheers and blue skies on whichever side you choose. Your faithful servant, Lord Alpha Juliet.
Oh, man.
That's excellent.
I am not sure, but I do have a suspicion that this was written through an Iron Maiden song lyrics filter of some kind. I'm just putting it out there.
AJ's brain. Yeah.
It is. A lot of his feedback is this way. And I will say that I'm going to pat myself on the back for getting through that as well as I did. So
I was amused by the fact that you managed explicating without any difficulty and struggled on Word.
This is why I didn't want to read it.
Right, actually.
Yeah, I thought
no, that's great feedback, Lord Alpha Juliet. Of course, you could have just said, I got my 100th hour on the way to the DPE, but in a Skyhawk for efficiency or economy of words.
Yeah.
So, what'd y'all think?
Then it wouldn't be from AJ if it was.
No, I wouldn't
trust that he wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So this feedback is self-verifying.
Exactly.
The sage, the artist, and the engineer turned jester.
Yeah, I think I liked that.
And Mark, I think if he knew you were going to be on this podcast joining us, I'm sure he would have had a clever one for you as well.
I'm
Sure.
I am happily cleverness free. I'm good.
Yeah, well, we'll just call you Wendell. He would have probably thrown in
Wendell. Yeah.
Wendell Geek.
Yeah. Well, Ben,
You're
I know
welcome,
you
by the
pulled,
way.
you pulled up a couple of other stats when you were.
Yeah, I just
using
had
logbook?
I had some fun. There was one of them that I found kind of interesting. It was my 100th hour of cross country time.
Yeah.
And I was coming back from Savannah, and it just reminded me, oh wait, I haven't always been an IFR pilot. I was coming back to Romeo Yankee Yankee, and I had to divert to LZU because of low clouds. And I remember I sat there for an hour, and then finally, I think it was probably a storm blowing over, but this was in October, so it just seemed kind of weird to me. It was later in the afternoon, but something was going on, and the ceiling they were IFR, and I had not had my ticket yet.
Were you texting yourself saying, well, it sounds like you about time to get that instrument rating? Kind of like what do you do to me?
Yeah. I can assure you I was thinking it.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yes.
and then two more real quick ones. 100th dual received
Wow.
was doing IFR check ride prep. And
Wow.
I did an ILS DME ARC. I think it was in Gadsden. So, and those melt my brain. I enjoy doing them. They're very complex, a lot of math, but I enjoy them. So
How is
and
it?
the last- go ahead.
How is an ILS DME different than a VOR DME ARC?
Just what your navigation source is.
Okay.
An ILS DME is you're using the ILS frequency and not a VOR frequency.
Does it still give you 360 degrees? I thought it just put you on the.
It's just you only have the 1 degree that you're going to.
Gotcha.
You only need one,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
So when you're coming off of it from a mileage, there's
The ARC is going to meet.
you have a fix to where you
Yeah.
start the arc.
Yeah.
And then when you do 10 degrees, in this case to the right, by the time you get to the ILS, you should be within
That
10
makes
to
sense.
20 degrees of the lateral guidance.
So for you instrument rated pilots over here, Ben and Mark, I'm sorry, Wendell, would you say how frustrating or disruptive is it to your training when you are flying a practice approach into a non-towered airport and there's somebody, VFR, of course, in the pattern, trying to figure out whether they can get in before you, there's a little bit of a conflict of the timing, you know what I mean? And so people can have different ways of approaching that in terms of not necessarily honoring the fact that this person's on an approach. And,
I want to hear Mark's, but I want to make a quick clarification. I wrote in my thing, it's an ILS DME ARC is what I did, not just an ILS ARC. It's the DME, and as Plane Places and Adventures, ILS DME usually has a final approach fix marked by DME and not cross bearings. So you're just keeping the plane 10 miles or whatever the prescribed procedure calls for away from the ILS system.
So no matter what, it's a circle that's going to intersect a line. Whenever it gets to that line, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's the DME ARC. So yeah, I just had scribble handwriting. To answer your question, Brian, and I'd be curious here, Mark, it's just one of those things that you deal with. You might call off the approach earlier and just stay above pattern altitude and just, fly the overhead. To me, it just didn't bother me. And whenever somebody would say, why are you doing an 8-mile final? I would say, the instructor or I would come and say, we're doing a practice approach. And then the response was, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I just didn't have that big of an issue with it. I don't know about you, Mark.
No, I haven't had issues with it either. It's usually pretty easy in non-towered airports to negotiate and have conversations back and forth. about, hey, who's going to go first and things of that nature. My own personal opinion is that if I'm flying an approach in a situation where somebody can be in the pattern, they are doing the appropriate approach to the airport, not me, and I will defer to them if there comes any conflict. That hasn't ever happened. But if there's traffic at the airport and it's any question, I will break off the approach and do so that I can come into a 45 on the downwind and do it that way.
Yeah, I guess I feel like today I was coming in and I was joining midfield left downwind 03 Bowling Green, and there was somebody doing a practice approach on 03, and they, I had been listening to them coming in, and it was kind of getting to sort of closer and closer and closer to where it's that weird point of, somebody's got to have a conversation here, And so I was the one to sort of be deferential and say, hey, I know you're on an approach here, practice approach. Do you feel comfortable with me, doing a short approach and getting in before you, or would you rather me extend? Or it's also because I don't know what helmet fire the student's going through that, so I just want people to have the opportunity. It seems like you've done us so much to get this approach to happen. So just have it sort of spoiled at kind of a slightly more critical point seems like it'd be a bummer. I don't know. I've never done it, but I will one day, and I'm trying to generate good karma.
Yeah. So you're just, for all intents and purposes, practicing lining up needles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have to break off early, you can go around and do it again, or get vectored around and try it again. It's, you'll get plenty of practice at that. So being called off of approach or breaking yourself off of an approach is just, it's kind of a non-event, really.
Well, I love
we also start to learn where the airports are that have approaches and not a lot of traffic, and you tend to go to those.
Yeah.
I can pick out those couple of airports in my head that are often used, that are untowered and are used for instrument practice stuff. But it took me several hundred hours to get the comfort to key up and say, hey, you're coming in on 2-2. Everybody's landing on 4. Where are you? What's your plan here? I don't want to go around and have you, have us touch. And it took me way too long to figure out that, yeah, that's right. You can just talk to people on the radio and figure this out.
What concept? Well, my favorite thing is just when they say, well, you're fine, but if you want to if you do want to get in front of us, just make it, a short approach, I guess. And I don't care when anybody says, like, I'm looking to do a short approach all the time. So I will create scenarios in which that's the only thing to do. So anyway, all good stuff.
Yep. Well, let's wrap up for tonight. Just as a quick recap, go back into your logbooks if you've been around for a little bit and go see what you're doing on your 100th hour. Or if you're a newer pilot, make sure you capture that moment, stay on top of it. And thanks again to Lord Alpha Juliet for his feedback and the challenging read. It was a lot of fun. So I want to ask all three of you, anything else for the good of the order?
I mean, look, the next time we do this, we're going to be in the same room in a foreign land with pepperoni rolls and lots of cameras and
PBR
and probably some high life or some PBR. And I'm super excited about it. I'm glad that we're all going to be able to do this in the same place. And it's going to be like a fraternity house. It's going to be like John Belushi style kind of Animal House situation. And Ted will be the person. Ted, don't bring an acoustic guitar. That's the only thing.
I'm going to play Wonderwall.
No, but I'm just super excited. This is going to be a blast, and there'll be some other special characters around too. So it's just going to be awesome. So I hope everybody tunes in for that. I don't know how it's all going to work exactly, but it will work somehow or another. And what an achievement. So here we go.
Yeah, very good. And, they're just numbers, whether it's years or hundreds, but use that as an excuse to look in your logbook and to think about where you were on that day. You heard us remember things that we'd forgotten about it, and you can write in and let us know where you were.
Tell us what you're doing on your 100th hour. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, send it.
Midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com.
So what I take away from Brian's description is I'm not going to let my wife listen to his description of what we're doing next week.
Very good. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mark. We appreciate it. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And signing off, episode 99 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good night, everybody.